first neorealist film was Roma Città Aperta by Roberto Rossellini. The film used professional actors like comic Aldo Fabrizi and Anna Magnani. The film was a success and became an ambassador of Italy abroad. The film was written by Sergio Amidei together with Rossellini, and they expanded the story of a priest and a group of partisans, which was commissioned by a rich, wealthy woman to Rossellini. The film saw the participation as a writer of Sergio Amidei, one of the writers of the neorealist movement. Other writers include Suso Cecchi D'Amico, Federico Fellini, and it is perhaps paradoxical that one of the most surrealist Italian filmmakers, the most connected to dreams and the fantastic, was one of the writers of the best neorealist films. Open City, this is the title of the film in English, starred Anna Magnani, who was a vital and a strong actress, a woman with a face of a person who has seen it all, and she was a professional actress. But Rossellini made Paisa after Rome Open City, and the film is divided into 6 episodes. The first one starts in Sicily, and the last one, the conclusion of the film, is set in the north of Italy. The film describes the ironies and the collaboration of Italians and Americans during the war of liberation against the Germans. Then the American version of the film had a map introducing each episode of the story. The film was also remarkable because it is one of the films that it was a very seminal film. It paved the way to some of the great films of Italian cinema, landmarks like La Strada, La Dolce Vita by Fellini, Michelangelo Antonioni's L'Avventura. Another important neorealist filmmaker is Luchino Visconti. Luchino Visconti is different from Rossellini or De Sica. He was a avowedly Marxist. He was he came from a rich family, and he is known as the Red Duke in Italy. His most important film, perhaps one of the best examples of neorealism, is La Terra Trema, 1948, The Earth Trembles, a film that tells the story of Sicilian fishermen who are financially exploited by the boat owners. When Visconti went to Sicily, he was surprised to find that the Sicilian villagers were not showing complexes before the camera. They were at ease with the camera, and they also participated in the film, not only by lending their bodies and their voices, their authenticity, so to speak, bringing reality to their roles, but They also translated the dialogue in Sicilian. So Visconti would tell them what he wanted to be said and how, and they would tell him how a Sicilian villager would say it. The film, as I said before, was based on Giovanni Verga's I Malavoglia, which is one of the best examples of Italian verismo, a literary movement. Neorealism was hugely influential. It has influenced cinema nuovo in Brazil, film in Taiwan, in Iran, American independent cinema. It was very in its early phases. It was hailed as a very remarkable artistic movement, but it received criticism in Italy from the left and the right, from the more conservative forces in society, but also from the communists and the socialists. Neorealism was criticized by the Christian Democrats and in particular by Giulio Andreotti, who stated that non si lavano i panni sporchi in pubblico, you don't wash the dirty linen in public, because this means that because in his opinion, neorealist films were a source were bringing bad publicity to Italy, and neorealist films made, according to this view, made Italians look like thieves and rascals and street urchins or pensioners on the verge of suicide, and it wasn't that was not it was a kind of downer for Italy. But what is revealing is that neorealist films were criticized also by the left, and this is surprising because neorealist films were totally sided, were allied to they portrayed the condition of the underprivileged within the society. And the problem for the left, from the communists in particular, it was that the films did not have a social or Marxist program of change and renovation. The problem with neorealist films, in other words, was not that they did not expose the problems of the society, the dislocation, the breakdown of the Italian institutions after the ventennio, after 20 years of dictatorship. The problem was that neorealist films were not programmatic, and I think this is an interesting aspect, especially if we consider that neorealist films are never preachy, and they are able to preserve, as André Bazin says, writing about bicycle thieves, they preserve the ambiguity that characterizes any fact, and you cannot do that if a film is programmatic. Okay. So there is no beating on the head saying you better feel solidarity towards these children or these unemployed character whose livelihood relies on a bike which has been taken away from him on his first day of work, and I'm referring to bicycle thieves. Neorealism has influenced many filmmakers, and there are several examples of homages, like Il ladro di bambini, a recent film by Gianni Amelio, is clearly inspired by neorealism. and also Certi Bambini, and I've chosen these two films because they exemplify in a clear way that children are at the center of, are one of the central theme of neorealist films, and especially the Sika worked with children, and he was able to convey their way of experiencing the world. Also, Martin Scorsese, who is a filmmaker who was being very influenced in his work by and also in his formation as a filmmaker by Italian neorealism. He dedicated a documentary, My Voyage to Italy, to Italian neorealism, and in which he comments on his own upbringing and his experience as a son of Sicilian immigrants in New York. Neorealism was also influential in France. The Nouvelle Vogue, Jean-Luc Godard or François Truffaut, they were influenced by neorealism, and Rossellini was connected to French intellectuals, writers, theoreticians, and filmmakers. So there was a realist movement in France, and there was a realist movement in Russia, in Germany. And this is an interesting fact, because usually we talk about Italian neorealism as a movement that brings reality to the cinema in a very compelling way, and we tend to overlook the fact that neorealism was also Italian. There is a specificity in Italian neorealism that distinguishes the movement from its French, German or Russian counterparts. And what distinguishes Italian neorealism from all the other movements I've mentioned is not so much the fact that Italian neorealism focused on the underprivileged, but the fact that it had an individualistic dimension, which is very evident, for example, in a film like Bicycle2, in which Antonio Ricci, the protagonist, has to rely on his own initiative in order to solve his problems. So there is something in Italian neorealism that distinguishes